Welcome back to Up the Villa. This is our opposition preview for Aston Villa v Crystal Palace, joined by Mason. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. You all right?
Yeah, I bet have you felt a bit better with no football over the international break, or
Sweet
you
relief.
missing it?
Sweet relief. You know, a lot of people have been bored with the international break, but look, I went to the England game, had a good weekend last weekend. Not sure if this weekend coming's going to be much better, to be honest with you. Like, you know, with the run that we've had this season so far, you know, when you look at fixtures you want to try and fix that run with, Villa away isn't one that I really think about. But yeah, let's just hope we have the same sort of result as we did in the Carabao Cup.
So what has been sort of the story of your season? I mean, from an outsider looking in it, I'd imagine that you were quite excited going into it, but then losing Elise is a bit of a blow. So then you sort of probably have that trepidation of not knowing what's going to happen there. But how's your season been, and how are you feeling as a Palace fan at the minute?
Well, first of all, I was very excited going into this season. There was a lot of Palace fans out there that were predicting Europe. I said that might be a bit too early. To be honest with you, I don't think we should be looking at Europe, even though we did have a brilliant end to last season. But I thought we sold Elise early enough that we could be prepared for the start of the season. We got rid of him in late June, so it wasn't like it was too late, to be honest. Like, the transfer window hadn't even opened yet. Look, the replacements haven't been great, but I don't like when people say the term replace when it comes to Elise, because I don't think you could replace the caliber of talent that he had on the pitch. Obviously, Kamada and Ismail Assar haven't been the best signings, but I've got a lot of hope they'll come good. In terms of performances, look, on the whole, they've been disappointing. We had that cute little win against Tottenham. Our only win. Obviously, we're in the quarterfinal of the Carabao Cup, so that's something that we're sort of holding on to be honest, because there's not much more excitement elsewhere.
Yeah, so you've touched on some of your recruitment, which I think is important to look at as well. Kamada, he was a Glasner signing, but he'd already been with Glasner before, hadn't he?
Yeah, with Frankfurt.
So it felt like that was one where he knew he could sort of fit him into the way that you play. Chalobah, pretty good sign at the back. I mean, we were linked with Chalobah, and I think he's good. Sarr, we were linked with him years ago as well. So do you feel like a lot of your new signings have suited the way that you play?
Well, yeah, I mean, with the centre backs, that's most of the reason why we got rid of Anderson very late in the window. You know, a lot of fans were like, oh, it's, you know, why have we done that so late? It's because Anderson, he was a good defender, but he had one brilliant strength, which is pumping it long. Now Glasner wants to do a more tiki-taka style of play. And I think because of the fact we got rid of such a massive player so late in the window, we sort of panicked and went for two signings in Lacroix, which we was linked with the whole window, and then Chalobah came in out of nowhere. Both, I think, have been very good signings. But in an attacking sense, you know, I mean, I don't think he's going to be playing, but Eddie Nketiah, I am very confused with that signing, to be honest with you, because we had Smith Rowe, who we didn't want, and look at the impact he's had at Fulham. You know, he scored against us in the last game, was man of the match for them. So, you know, defensively, I don't think we've had such bad a window. I think it's going forward, you know, with Ismail Assar, he's not been as clinical as I thought he would be. Daichi Kamada hasn't had the best of games, and he's had a lot of criticism. But yeah, on the whole, it's not been great. And there's a reason why we're in the bottom three, and this is one of the reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched you quite a few times. I watched you against Wolves. I watched you against Spurs, and I thought your press against Spurs was good. And I think it's finding that firepower, because you do create a lot of chances. I mean, the game that I watched against Wolves, you had that many chances. I mean, he could have had an hat trick.
Yeah.
So I think that's one. And Nketiah, I think it's a little bit like Villa with Duran, isn't it? You know, we've got our striker that we play, and he's probably first choice. To play Duran, we have to sort of alter how we play, and I feel like that's a little bit like with Palace. Really, I think Mateta's probably going to play, but he doesn't really start Nketiah over Mateta, does he? So it is a little bit of a straight. If you spent sort of like, I don't know, what did they spend on Nketiah? About 30 million.
30 million, yeah.
That's a lot of money to play for a player that's out of position, isn't it?
Yeah,
On that left side.
yeah. When we got rid of Odson Edward, we knew that we needed to get some kind of backup striker. We didn't think it was going to be 30 million, which is nearly our record signing. Benteke being our record, who's played for you lot as well. But look, I personally wouldn't start Eddie Nketiah over Mateta. I think it does Mateta an injustice based off the form he had at the end of last season. And maybe Elise did feed him quite a bit, and that's why Mateta's not scoring as many goals this season. But, this is where frustration comes in with us Palace fans, because we've been so used to being a one-man team. Like we had Michael Elise. Okay, Eze feeds in as well, and he's a very, very good player, don't get me wrong. But before that, we had Zaha, who did the same kind of thing, feeding our attackers, which got them goals. It's the lack of, ideas, really. I feel like with, the window that we've had, touching upon that again, is, again, with Kamada, it's sort of been like, well, Glasner worked with him, we'll try that. We've been linked with Ismail Assar for a few years, let's try that. It's not got a lot of thought behind it. It's just like, oh, we'll just chuck some money at this player that we've been linked with for a couple of years. So yeah.
How do you feel about Oliver Glasner? Because, I imagine you have this thought in the back of your mind of how good you were last year. I mean, you destroyed us on the last day, and you were doing that to a lot of teams. You were ripping teams apart, and now you're starting to sort of play the way that you are. Do you feel like you can get back to that sort of dynamic team that you were last season, or do you think because you've got rid of Elise, he was like the big part of the SA link up as well?
Yeah, well, look, after every game when we lose, obviously I'm going to be a bit frustrated, and I'm going to be like, oh, Elise was the only factor last season and what have you. But when I actually think about it, especially with that Fulham defeat, zooming in on that a bit, I don't see what Glasner can do other than what he did. If you look at our bench in that game, we had, no disrespect, but we had about 3 or 4 academy players on that bench who were nowhere near Premier League ready. So he hasn't got a lot of squad depth to work with. And at the end of last season, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, how many of them teams were on the beach? Like Villa had already got Champions League football. Even though you were 5-0 down at Selhurst Park last season, you were still in a party mode. When I, ranked all the away fans that went to Selhurst Park, I put you lot at the top because it was such a great atmosphere. Same as Manchester United, we beat them 4-0. They didn't know what European competition but they were going to be in, but they knew they were going to be in Europe of some kind. They were fighting between the Champions League and the Europa League, and they needed to beat us to stay in that top 4 race. And then they lost 4-0 and they were just on the beach. As soon as we went 1-0 up, they just gave up. So, it's not. I'm not Glasner out because I want him to get a January window under his belt. But that being said, if we keep going the rate we're going, if we get to January like it, then we'll be bottom of the league without question. So
yeah, it's a tough one because he's a good coach, isn't he? And he's won a European trophy, so that's pretty big, to be fair. So who would you say are your standout players? I mean, Mark Guay, you kept him in the summer, so that was a big plus point because it looked like that saga was just going on. And generally when they go on like that, they normally leave. It's very rare that they end up staying. So you must have been buzzing when he stayed.
Well, yeah, us Palace fans, we're sort of used to sagas going on like that. Zaha, he had bids from Everton, Arsenal, clubs all around the world. Gay, I think, had 5 bids going up in 5 million each time. And,
so many.
We kept going up by 10 million of what we want from him, and Newcastle went, you know what, there's no point. And that's obviously a massive plus. In terms of standout players, I would say in terms of your wing backs, I would say Daniel Munoz, quite a good threat down that right-hand side. And I think he was the one that put the cross in for Eze's header against Villa in the Carabao Cup. So, he's got an assist at Villa Park already this season. In terms of midfield, I think our hands are tied. I watched your TikTok earlier about the midfield battles, and it's probably going to be Hughes and Justin Devaney. I don't really know how Justin Devaney plays. I've barely watched him in the youth setup. He started against Fulham. He come off inside an hour. I don't know how he's going to play. Will Hughes, all you got to do is pass around him, to be honest. Like, he's quite a static player. He's not got a lot of pace. Going forward, I mean, I would say our threat is Ismail Assar purely because of pace. We've not got, I don't think we'll have Eze. I think if he does get involved, he'll be on the bench. Same with Eddie Nketiah. I know Adam Wharton's not playing. He shouldn't be playing anyway. So I think our front three will probably be Mateta up front, Sarr on the right, and maybe Jeffrey Schlupp on the left. Again, I think Oliver Glasner's hands are tied.
What's wrong with Eze? What is his injury?
Well, he picked up the injury against Villa in the Carabao Cup, and it was I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think it's a hamstring injury. Obviously not the best. And I think all the other injuries have been the same sort of caliber. And this is where I don't agree with the treatment of Adam Wharton. We signed him in January, for good amount of money, and we was thinking, Blackburn midfielder for that much, and he proved himself last season. Let's be honest, and he got into the England team and what have you. Start of the season, he hasn't had his best start, but we were like, you know what, we can see what he can do. And then all of a sudden, Palace go and play him injured against Liverpool, and then we had an international break. He wasn't selected for the England team. We could have put him in surgery, and he'd have been in recovery quicker. Instead, we were like, no, we're going to put him in. We're going to put him in the team in 3 games in 6 days against Tottenham, Villa, and it was going to be Wolves. And then he got injured against Villa. We all knew it was going to end up like that. So, I just don't understand why we didn't just get it done, especially with a player of that quality. And instead, we're having to play, no disrespect, Will Hughes. We also got Jefferson Lerma injured as well. I forgot to mention that. And yes, we've got Will Hughes and an inexperienced Justin Devaney against the likes of who Villa have got in midfield. It's not going to be easy for him, and I think that's where we lose the battles on Saturday, to be honest.
I'm glad you mentioned Munoz because I really like him. I've done a little bit of a tactical piece on him, so I'm glad you've said that because it sort of backs up what I've seen with my eyes as well. And so, what have you made of Villa under Unai Emery, sort of last 2 years, this season as well?
Well, I mean, from an outside looking in, it's brilliant. I looked at your recent record and you've lost your last 4 games, which doesn't look pretty, but, you've beaten Bayern Munich at home in the Champions League. I mean, I can't stress that enough. Not a lot of Premier League sides right now, really, apart from maybe your Arsenal, your Man City, your Liverpool, would beat Bayern Munich at home right now. So, and also as well, Villa's records at Villa Park's insane. I'm not expecting anything on Saturday, to be honest. I think when we get going is against Newcastle at home next week. Because, like I said, with terms of where they go in the form, Newcastle's away form's nowhere near as good as their home form. So that's where I think we start picking up points. So, yeah.
What type of game then do you think it's going to be on Saturday? Do you think you can take some confidence that you've already beat us at Villa Park? I mean, that's kind of a good psychological way of looking at it, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't really watch the Villa game live. I was working. And when you guys leveled the score with Jean Duran, I was like, nah, it's done. Our records in the Carabao Cup ain't great anyway. It's our first quarterfinal in 13 years. But yeah, I think we'll go into it with we beat them already. Let's do this. I will have in mind, though, that the squad that Villa picked was nowhere near as good as their Premier League side. When I made my TikTok after the game, I got a lot of comments saying, yeah, but we played our B team effectively. If you take out Jean Duran, Kamara, maybe Buendia and what have you, looking at the back line and the goalkeeper, it wasn't a great Villa side. And we played our strongest side because, well, this isn't a dig at Oliver Glasner, but he seems to take the Carabao Cup more seriously than the Premier League. So, it's going to be, I think, a worse side for us and a better side for you. So I think it's going to be a completely different game, even though we've beaten you lot already.
Who have you got in the Carabao?
Arsenal away.
Oh, yeah. It's one of them, isn't it? It's like when you get through and you're like, oh, I'm buzzing, and then you're like, oh, really away. So, yeah, but you never know. I mean, that you got to look at it like this, haven't you? Wasn't our priority. It wasn't Emery's priority, and he fielded that team against your team. So, you know, if Arteta does something similar and you go full strength, then you might be able to do the same as what you did to Villa, really. So, you are on TikTok then. So, where can Villa fans find you, and what do you do on TikTok?
So, Palace Mad Mason YT on TikTok and my YouTube, Palace Mad Mason. Yeah, following on there has been pretty good, I must say. I never thought I'd get as many as I have. So yeah, I've always appreciated for any new followers off of your channel onto my TikTok and my YouTube as well. I'll be doing vlogs and a review after the game on Saturday.
Yep, Villa fans, go and check it out. I'll put the link in the description and the YouTube channel in the title of the video as well. So cheers for coming on, mate. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Cheers, mate. Thanks. It's always a pleasure.